He was about to say yes in front of a millionaire audience and a perfect bride. But just before the ceremony, a street girl whispers, "She's going to trick you." Doubt consumes him, and he discovers he was about to fall into a trap planned for years. The rain drummed against the windshield of the sleek black Mercedes as Michael Harrison sat trapped in downtown Manhattan traffic. 2 weeks. In exactly 14 days, he would be walking down the aisle of St. Patrick's Cathedral, exchanging vows with Victoria Sterling, the woman every man in New York's elite circles envied him. The wedding preparations were flawless. The guest list read like a who's who of American high society, and their honeymoon suite in the Maldives was already reserved and paid for. Michael adjusted his Italian silk tie and glanced at his Rolex. The board meeting with his investment firm's biggest clients was in 20 minutes, and this traffic was making him nervous. At 38, he had built Harrison Capital from nothing into a billion-dollar empire, and punctuality was one of the principles that had gotten him there. His life had unfolded exactly as he had planned during his Harvard business. School days, prestigious education, check. Fortune established before 40, check. Influence in the right circles, check. And now, marriage to a woman who embodied everything he had always wanted in a partner. Victoria was perfect. The daughter of a prominent Boston family, she carried herself with the grace of old money and the intelligence of someone who understood the weight of social responsibility. Her charity work was impeccable, her connections invaluable, and when she walked into a room, conversations stopped. She was everything his mother had dreamed of in a daughter-in-law before she passed away 5 years ago. The traffic. Light ahead turned red, and Michael's Mercedes came to a complete stop. He was reaching for his phone to call his assistant when a small fist knocked against the passenger window. Startled, he looked up to see a girl, no more than 10 years old, standing in the rain. Her clothes were dirty and oversized, her dark hair plastered against her face, but her eyes held an intensity that made him pause. Most people in his position would have simply looked away, perhaps instructed their driver to move on. But something about the child's persistent knocking made Michael lower the window slightly. "Please, mister, I need to tell you something really important," the girl said, her voice barely audible over the rain and traffic noise. "I'm sorry, but I don't have any money on me," Michael replied, already beginning to raise the window again. "It's not about money," she said urgently, pressing her small hand against the glass. "It's about the lady you're going to marry. She's not who you think she is." Michael's hand froze on the window control. "What did you say?" "The blonde lady with the fancy car. I've seen her before. She doesn't love you. She's planning something bad with another man." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. How could this street child possibly know about Victoria? And more importantly, how could she know about their engagement when they had kept the details private until the announcement 2 months ago? "What are you talking about? How do you know anything about my fiancé?" But before the girl could answer, the traffic light changed to green, and the cars behind Michael began honking impatiently. The girl stepped back from the window, and in his moment of hesitation she disappeared into the crowd of pedestrians rushing through the crosswalk. Michael sat there for a moment, his heart racing, before the honking intensified and he was forced to drive forward. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. It was impossible. A random child on the street couldn't possibly know anything about his personal life. Yet something in her eyes, in the urgency of her voice, had seemed so genuine, so desperate to warn him. The board meeting was a blur. Michael found himself nodding at the right moments and giving appropriate responses, but his mind kept returning to the girl's words. "She doesn't love you. She's planning something bad with another man." It was ridiculous, paranoid thinking, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. After the meeting, Michael found himself driving through the same intersection where he had encountered the girl, but there was no sign of her. He spent the next hour circling the surrounding blocks, peering into doorways and asking shop owners if they had seen a young girl matching her description. Nothing. That evening, as he sat in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Michael tried to analyze the situation rationally. Victoria had never given him any reason to doubt her. She was loving, attentive, and seemed genuinely excited about their upcoming wedding. Her background was impeccable, her references unquestionable. The daughter of Charles Sterling, a respected federal judge, and Margaret Sterling, who sat on the boards of half a dozen charities. Victoria herself had graduated from Wellesley and worked for the Metropolitan Museum of Art before they met at a charity gala 18 months ago. But as Michael reflected on their relationship, small details began to surface that he had previously dismissed. Victoria had always been vague about her childhood, deflecting questions about her early years, with charming stories that somehow never quite provided concrete details. She had never introduced him to her parents, always explaining that they were traveling or dealing with health issues. When he had suggested visiting them in Boston, she had found reasons to postpone the trip. More troubling was how she handled personal questions about her past relationships or her time in college. She would smile that perfect smile and change the subject so smoothly that Michael had admired her skill rather than questioning her evasiveness. Now he wondered if there was something more calculated behind those deflections. Michael poured himself a scotch and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Below, millions of people lived their lives, including somewhere out there, a young girl who claimed to know something that could change everything. He had built his fortune on gut instincts and the ability to read people, yet he realized he had never truly examined Victoria with the same scrutiny he applied to business deals. The next morning, Michael made a decision that would have seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. Instead of going directly to his office, he drove back to the intersection, where he had met the girl. It took 3 hours of patient waiting, but finally he spotted her small figure emerging from an alley near a subway entrance. "Hey!" he called out, getting out of his car and approaching her carefully. "Remember me? From yesterday?" The girl looked around nervously, as if checking for something or someone. "You came back," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "I need to understand what you meant yesterday. About my fiancé." The girl studied his face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Not here. Too many people watching. Can you meet me tonight? There's a place by the Hudson River, near the old pier at 79th Street, after dark." "How do I know you'll be there?" "Because," she said, her young face serious beyond her years, "you need to know the truth before it's too late." That evening, Michael found himself walking along the Hudson River promenade, questioning his sanity. He was a successful businessman about to meet with a homeless child based on cryptic warnings about his fiancée. Yet something compelled him forward, a nagging sensation that his carefully constructed life might not be as solid as he believed. The girl was waiting for him by the designated pier, sitting on a bench and looking out at the water. In the dim light of the street lamps, she looked even younger and more vulnerable. "You really came," she said as he approached. "I'm here. Now tell me what you know." The girl took a deep breath. "I've been living on the streets for 2 years now. You see things when you're invisible. People don't notice kids like me." She paused, then continued. "I saw your lady 3 weeks ago. She was with a man at a coffee shop downtown, not just talking, they were kissing and planning." Michael felt his stomach drop, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Planning what?" "They were talking about money, about how she would get access to your accounts after the wedding, about some papers that would change everything once you signed them. The man, he's older, has dark hair and a scar on his chin. He called her by a different name too." "What name?" "Sarah. He called her Sarah, not Victoria." The words hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Michael sat down heavily on the bench beside the girl, his mind reeling. Everything he thought he knew about his life, his future, was suddenly called into question by this child who had nothing to gain from lying to him. "There's more," the girl continued quietly. "I followed them after they left the coffee shop. They went to an apartment building in Queens. I waited outside for a while and saw them through a window on the 2nd floor. They had papers spread out on a table, and she was showing him photos." "Photos of what?" "Photos of you. Your house, your office building, even pictures from inside your apartment. Like they had been watching you for a long time." Michael's blood ran cold. The thought that he had been under surveillance without knowing it was terrifying. But more than fear, He felt a growing anger at the possibility that he had been deceived so completely. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "What do you want from me?" The girl looked at him with those unnervingly mature eyes. "My name is Emma. I don't want anything from you. I just know what it's like when adults lie to kids and hurt them. I thought maybe I could help stop someone from getting hurt." In that moment, Michael saw something in Emma that reminded him of himself at a young age, before success and wealth had insulated him from the raw aspects of life. A fierce independence and a moral clarity that came from having nothing left to lose. "Emma," he said carefully, "if what you're telling me is true, then you might be in danger too. If these people realize you've seen them, they might try to hurt you." Emma shrugged with the fatalistic acceptance of someone who had already faced the worst life could offer. "I've been in danger every day since I ended up on the streets. At least this time maybe something good could come from it." As they sat together by the river, Michael made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Whatever the truth about Victoria, he was going to find out. And somehow this brave little girl had become his most important ally in uncovering it. "Emma," he said, "I want you to know that no matter what happens, you don't have to face this alone anymore. Can you trust me enough to help me figure out what's really going on?" Emma nodded slowly, and for the first time since their conversation began, she smiled. It was a small, tentative smile, but it held the promise of something neither of them had expected to find in each other. 3 days passed without any sign of Emma, and Michael found himself consumed with worry. He had given her his phone number and told her to call if she felt unsafe, but the silence stretched on, making him fear the worst. During those long hours, he had made a decision that surprised even himself. He hired a private investigator. James Mitchell had been recommended by his attorney as the best in the business, someone who could uncover the truth about anyone. When Michael explained the situation, omitting only Emma's identity to protect her, Mitchell nodded with the weary understanding of someone who had seen it all before. "Marriage fraud is more common than people think," Mitchell explained during their first meeting, "especially targeting wealthy individuals. Give me everything you have on this Victoria Sterling, and I'll start digging." Meanwhile, Michael's anxiety about Emma grew stronger each day. He found himself driving through the neighborhoods where he had first seen her, stopping to ask other homeless individuals if they had seen a young girl matching her description. Most looked at him with suspicion, but a few remembered Emma and confirmed his worst fears. "Haven't seen the kid in days," said an older man who lived under a bridge near the Hudson. "That's not like her. Emma's smart, keeps regular routines. Something must have spooked her bad." On the 4th day, as Michael was leaving his office building, he spotted a familiar small figure sitting on the steps of the public library across the street. His heart leaped with relief as he recognized Emma, though she looked thinner and more tired than before. "Emma," he called out, carefully crossing the busy street, "I've been worried sick about you." She looked up, and he could see fear in her eyes. "I had to hide," she said quietly. "They were looking for me." "Who was looking for you?" "The man with the scar. I saw him in the neighborhood asking questions about a kid who had been hanging around the intersection. I got scared and found a place to stay hidden for a few days." Michael felt a chill run through him. The threat was real, and Emma was in danger because she had tried to help him. "Come with me," he said firmly. "I'm getting you somewhere safe." That evening, Michael brought Emma to his penthouse. He had prepared a guest room for her and ordered enough food to feed a small army. As Emma took her first real shower in weeks and changed into clean clothes he had bought for her, Michael called his housekeeper to explain that he would have a young guest staying with him indefinitely. Over dinner, Emma told him more about what she had observed. "I saw them together 4 more times after that first meeting. They always talked about the wedding like it was some kind of business deal. The man, he kept saying things like, 'After the papers are signed,' and 'once we have access to the accounts.'" The next morning, Mitchell called with preliminary results that confirmed Michael's worst fears. "Victoria Sterling doesn't exist," the investigator said bluntly. "The woman you know by that name is actually Sarah Chen, and she has a record." Michael's hand tightened on the phone. "What kind of record?" "Fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. She's been arrested 3 times in the past 5 years for targeting wealthy men. Each time she used a different identity and had help from the same accomplice, a man named Derek Russo. He matches the description your source gave you, scar and all. The room seemed to spin around Michael as the full scope of the deception became clear. How long have they been planning this? Based on what I've found so far, they've been building this particular identity for over a year, probably researching you specifically for at least 6 months before they arranged that first meeting at the charity gala. That evening, Michael sat down with Emma to share what he had learned. She listened with the serious attention of someone far older than her years. "So, what are you going to do?" Emma asked when he finished explaining. "I'm going to confront her. But first, I want to make sure you're completely safe. Emma, I know we've only known each other for a few days, but I want you to know that whatever happens, I'm not going to abandon you." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Michael realized that in the space of a few days, this brave little girl had become more important to him than anyone had been in years. "Because you saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life, and because everyone deserves someone who cares about them." 2 days later, Michael arranged to meet Victoria or Sarah at their favorite restaurant in Midtown. He had spent hours rehearsing what he would say, how he would confront her with the truth. But when she walked in, looking as beautiful and composed as always, he felt a momentary doubt about everything he had learned. "Darling, you look tired," Victoria said as she sat down across from him. "The wedding preparations must be wearing on you." "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding," Michael said, studying her face carefully. "I think we should postpone it." For just a moment, he caught a flash of something in her eyes, panic perhaps, before her perfect smile returned. "Postpone?" "Michael, everything is already arranged. The cathedral, the reception, the honeymoon. Our guests have made travel arrangements." "I know this will sound strange, but I've been having doubts about how well we really know each other," Michael continued. "For instance, I realized I've never met your parents." "We've discussed this, darling. They're both dealing with health issues right now." "What's your mother's maiden name?" Michael asked suddenly. Victoria paused, the question clearly catching her off guard. "What an odd question. Why would you ask that?" "Just curious about family history. You know so much about mine, but you've shared so little about yours." "My mother's maiden name is Wilson," she said, after another pause. "Margaret Wilson Sterling." Michael nodded, though Mitchell had already confirmed that no such person existed. "And what hospital were you born in?" This time the pause was longer, and Michael could see her calculating behind those beautiful eyes. "Michael, what's this really about? Why are you interrogating me like some kind of suspect?" "Because I know who you really are, Sarah." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Victoria's composed mask slipped completely, replaced by something cold and calculating. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sarah Chen. 3 arrests for fraud. Derek Russo with the scar on his chin. Should I continue?" Victoria, or Sarah, sat back in her chair, and for the first time since he had known her, she looked genuinely vulnerable. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to protect myself and the people I care about." "People you care about," she laughed bitterly. "You mean your little street rat informant?" "Yes, Michael, I know about the girl. Did you really think Derek wouldn't figure out where the leak came from?" Michael felt a surge of protective anger. "If you or your partner have hurt that child in any way—" "Relax, we don't hurt children. We're thieves, not monsters." Sarah's voice had changed completely, the cultured accent gone, replaced by something harder and more authentic. "Though I have to admit, I'm impressed. In 5 years of doing this, you're the first Mark who figured it out before the wedding." "Why?" Michael asked. "Why live this way?" For a moment, Sarah's expression softened, and he caught a glimpse of something almost human beneath the criminal facade. "Because it's what I know how to do. Derek found me when I was 16, homeless and desperate. He taught me how to survive. He taught you how to be a criminal." "He taught me how to eat," she snapped back, "how to have a place to sleep, how to never be powerless again." Then her voice grew quiet. "But you wouldn't understand that. You've never had to choose between survival and morality." Michael thought about Emma, about the choices she had faced on the streets, and realized that Sarah might have started out as another vulnerable child who had been failed by the world. But unlike Emma, she had chosen a path that involved hurting others. "It's over, Sarah. I've turned everything over to the authorities. They'll be looking for both you and Derek." Sarah nodded slowly. "I figured as much when Derek told me he couldn't find the girl anymore." She gathered her purse and stood up. "For what it's worth, Michael, you're not a bad man. In another life, under different circumstances, maybe things could have been different. Maybe they still can be. You could testify against Derek, cooperate with the authorities, start over." She smiled sadly. "You really don't understand, do you? There is no starting over for people like me. There's only the next mark, the next score, the next time Derek decides I'm useful." With that, she walked out of the restaurant, leaving Michael alone with the wreckage of what he had thought was his future. 3 weeks later, both Sarah Chen and Derek Russo were arrested at a hotel in Atlantic City, where they had been planning their next operation. The authorities thanked Michael for his cooperation and informed him that his case had helped them close investigations into several other similar schemes. But by then, Michael's attention was focused entirely on his new life with Emma. The adoption process had begun, and Emma was thriving in her new environment. She had started school for the first time in 2 years and was proving to be exceptionally bright. More importantly, she was learning to trust again, and Michael was discovering that being responsible for another person's well-being was more rewarding than any business success he had ever achieved. It was during one of their Saturday trips to the animal shelter, where Emma had volunteered to help socialize rescue dogs, that Michael met Dr. Claire Martinez. Claire was the shelter's lead veterinarian, a warm woman with kind eyes and gentle hands who clearly adored animals and children in equal measure. "Emma talks about you constantly," Claire said one afternoon, as they watched Emma play with a group of rescued puppies. "She lights up whenever she mentions something you've done together." "She's changed my life," Michael admitted. "I thought I knew what I wanted, but it turns out what I needed was completely different." Claire studied him with intelligent brown eyes. "It takes a special kind of person to open their home to a child who's been through what Emma has experienced. A lot of people would have just called social services and walked away." Over the following months, Michael found himself looking forward to those Saturday visits to the shelter. Claire's genuine warmth and dedication to helping vulnerable animals reminded him of Emma's courage in helping a stranger. Gradually, their conversations extended beyond the shelter, and Michael discovered that Claire had grown up in foster care herself, which explained her special understanding of Emma's situation. The first time Michael suggested that Claire join them for dinner, Emma grinned and said, "It's about time you asked her out, Dad." The word Dad stopped Michael in his tracks. It was the first time Emma had called him anything other than his name, and the simple word carried more meaning than any business contract he had ever signed. A year later, Michael and Claire were married in a small ceremony in Central Park, with Emma as the maid of honor. The wedding was everything his first planned wedding had not been: authentic, intimate, and filled with people who genuinely cared about each other. As they exchanged vows, Michael caught Emma's eye and saw her wipe away a tear. Later, during the reception, she pulled him aside. "You know," she said with the wisdom that seemed to come naturally to her, "if that traffic light hadn't turned red that day, none of this would have happened." Michael hugged his daughter, realizing that the best things in his life had come from moments when his carefully planned existence had been disrupted by something unexpected and genuine. "You're right," he said. "Sometimes the best things happen when we're brave enough to pay attention to what we didn't expect to find." 5 years later, the Harrison family lived in a comfortable house in Westchester, with a large yard where their 3 rescue dogs could run freely. Emma, now 15, was an honor student who volunteered at the animal shelter every weekend and had dreams of becoming a veterinarian like her stepmother. Michael had scaled back his business commitments to focus on what truly mattered: family dinners, school events, and the simple joy of watching someone he loved discover their potential. On quiet evenings when they sat together in their living room, Michael sometimes reflected on how close he had come to a life of beautiful deception. A street child's courage and honesty had saved him from losing everything that actually mattered, and in return, he had gained a family he never knew he needed. The true wealth, he had learned, wasn't in his bank account or his business empire. It was in Emma's laughter when Claire told stories about the animals at the shelter, in the way his wife's eyes lit up when she talked about her work, and in the knowledge that they had all saved each other in different ways. Love, it turned out, could emerge from the most unexpected places and transform everything if you were brave enough to recognize it when it appeared.